This is not a blanket pause on federal assistance and grant programs from the Trump administration. Individual assistance, that includes, I'm not naming everything that's included, but just to give you a few examples, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause. However, it is the responsibility of this president and this administration to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars.
That is the brand new White House press secretary during her first briefing today, talking about President Trump's controversial new order to put a freeze temporarily on all federal grants and loan programs. While the press secretary did name some programs that won't be affected, there are still a lot of questions about other funding and other programs that she couldn't answer. Like, what about federal funds for veterans organizations? Does this include housing assistance or disaster assistance? What about state funding to help with education or infrastructure? Look, there's a lot of confusion about this order, and the fact is the White House has not been able to give anyone any solid clarity here. And when there's lack of clarity, that leaves folks guessing and speculating about what's happening and then leaves them fearful about whether or not they're going to be impacted. Now, I certainly do not have the answers. No one does. But I do have the facts of what we know so far. And here they are. Last night, the Office of Management and Budget issued this 2-page memo to every single executive department and agency of the federal government. This memo says, under President Trump's direction, all agencies must temporarily pause all activities related to obligations or disbursement of all federal financial assistance. Why? According to the White House, because in fiscal year 2024, there was $3 trillion of federal spending on some kind of financial assistance program for Americans or American organizations. The memo says if taxpayer money is being used on those financial assistance programs, it should be advancing the Trump administration priorities, not Marxist equity, transgenderism, and Green New Deal social engineering policies. The memo says by 5 p.m. Eastern today, every government agency and department must pause issuance of new awards, disbursement of federal funds under all open awards, and other relevant agency actions that may be implicated by the executive orders to the extent permissible by law until OMB has reviewed and provided guidance to your agency with respect to the information submitted. Then, by February 10th, each one of those agencies and departments must provide a comprehensive list of all of the programs and activities that the federal government funds so that those programs and activities can be reviewed to make sure that basically they're Trump approved. Okay, so there are a few things to clarify here. One, the press secretary said repeatedly this order would not impact federal funding that goes directly to individuals. But the question is, what about the federal funding that goes to states and organizations and charities that then get distributed to individuals? The press secretary would not give specifics and said she kept saying this.
Again, direct assistance will not be impacted. I've been asked and answered about this OMB memo. There's many other topics of the day. Jackie Heinrich.
Direct assistance, Caroline, if it's going to another organization and then trickling down.
Direct assistance that is in the hands of the American people will not be impacted. Again, as I said to Peter, we will continue to provide that list as it comes to fruition. But OMB right now is focused on analyzing the federal government's spending.
I have yet to see that list, but when I get it, I will make sure that you have it too. The other thing to clarify here is the legality of all of this. There are many in Congress and many states' attorneys general who say this move by Trump is blatantly illegal. Why? Because this money was already approved by law, passed by Congress, and signed by a president. Lots of lawmakers say the Constitution gives them the power of the purse, and if Congress approves funding for something and the president signs the law, which in several cases President Biden did, and so did all of the presidents before him, then President Trump can't just swoop in on his own and just decide not to distribute the money. That's not how the Constitution works. The other important part for you to understand is there's a separate law that prevents a president from doing this specific thing. It's called the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. The law reasserts Congress's constitutional power of the purse, and the law specifically prevents the president or other government officials from unilaterally substituting their own funding decisions for the funding decisions of Congress. This law was passed in response to what Congress saw at the time as President Nixon's executive overreach during his term. Now, several nonprofit organizations and several states' attorneys general have already or are in the process of suing the Trump administration, trying to get a judge to pause this freeze on funding for grants and loans. I'm sure there are going to be more lawsuits as the day goes on. So if you want to read the original memo from the Office of Management and Budget, I will email that out to you tonight, but you need to be signed up for my Facts HQ Substack email. It's very easy to do, and it's linked on my profile.